So thank you very much, Sarah, and welcome to our first speaker series event. Uh,
Thanks for having me.
so I'm going to allow you to do a little bit of an introduction of yourself. I have seen you from the exterior and your story. We both come from a food background. We both were getting into entrepreneurship and growing our first business at a similar time. Then you kind of went to PEI on your own train, and I've kind of lost contact. So I pieces a little bit on LinkedIn, but I'm really interested in hearing about. Before we fully get started, I'd like the audience to know that I'm going to only be watching the Q&A. Sarah, you don't need to watch anything. I'll manage everything, and just to make sure that anybody who has questions I really want to pull from. But feel free to chat amongst yourselves. But the Q&A is where I'm going to be watching if you'd like to submit something that you'd really like Sarah to ask or answer. So to get started, Sarah, why don't you describe what your company is today? We're going to get into some of the history and the how and the what's and the whys, but what is your company today, and what's it doing?
Perfect. So my name is Sarah Benetto O'Brien. I am the CEO of the Handpie company located in Albany, PEI, which right now is basically a snowdrift. Fairly rural. Right now, I mean, COVID was a really strange year, but we're kind of in our COVID crew. So there's 6 staff right now. We make savory handheld pies. So kind of like a meal and a pie based on the Cornish pasty from the UK, but with all local ingredients. All of my staff right now that's in production is a graduate of the culinary school in Charlottetown. We sell only within Prince Edward Island. We're only provincially certified at this point, but we do have an amazing distributor with ADL Foods, and we supply, I think right now we're at 22 retailers, tip to tip on PEI.
Nice, that's great. So I want to start looking further back, and we're going to jump around the chronology and the timeline a little bit. The beginning for me might not be the beginning in a traditional sense, but I was wondering, when did you start thinking of yourself or even calling yourself an entrepreneur? When was that point for you?
I love that I have these prep questions because my answer has changed about 6 times since last night. I feel like my mom would tell you when I was like 6 and I decided to someday own a purely Jell-O restaurant with my cousins. I've always been a little bit stubborn, and I feel like that, I love that you're laughing already, that really lends itself well to being an entrepreneur. You know, we all have our base skills in our own sectors, but if you're just constantly wanting to fix the problems around you, you might be an entrepreneur. So when I really started saying that I was an entrepreneur rather than saying I was a chef, probably happened when we incorporated, which was only about 2 years ago. Then I have the CEO hat, right? I have fancy new business cards.
I still haven't started using the CEO ever, so maybe I'll get there eventually. So that's interesting. That's further along than I thought it would be. If I was to ask you when you think you took the first leap, when you took the leap into doing business on your own, and there was a bit of a risk factor as opposed to having a job, when do you think that was?
Ooh, so you know me kind of from the Scapes years. So in the winter of 2013, actually, I'll back it up a bit. I had my son in 2010. I was working full time up until I was, a giant pregnant human. Like 2 weeks before I had him, I was still working as a head chef at a really busy restaurant. To taste things on the stove, I had to come in sideways. Like it was ridiculous. Don't do that. But then after I had him, my husband's originally from PEI. We decided that we wanted to raise our child on PEI. Came back home, and then quickly realized there isn't jobs for someone with my training or my skills, especially in rural PEI, year round. So I went into working for a potter. I learned how to make pottery and then started teaching pottery classes like 2 weeks into that gig. I really, really love people. So partially the way through that, I got through those first crazy years of toddlerhood and decided that I wanted to get back into food really seriously. So I took a year and I did an apprenticeship on a local organic mixed farm. So veggies, meats, grains, just to learn what grew here and when. And then my gears started turning. Okay, well, this is all research for something. Why am I doing this research? I'm going to start up a tiny local foods restaurant. And as one does, right?
I get it.
Right? We all have these ideas. Just are you the type of person that's going to be like, all right, we're going to make this happen. I did not have money, so decided, all right, how am I going to build interest in this? How am I going to test the market and try to raise funds? Kickstarter was super big. So decided in 2014, I'm going to gather up my resources. I did a little video, launched Kickstarter, and hit my goal of 10 grand within 2 weeks, which blew my mind. It seemed like a crazy amount of money. Sure, let's open a restaurant with $10,000. I don't know if I could ever do that again. But then, yeah, just over a couple of months, found a location. It was only 5 minutes away from my house. Got some amazing suppliers lined up for my contacts through the local organic farm that I had worked on. Got some used equipment, went to some really sketchy restaurant auctions up in Tignish, PEI. If anyone knows.
I've been to those auctions.
It's amazing. You have to fight the old guys, man.
Yeah.
I'm good at that too, though. So yeah, just kind of launched it through that, and that's how it started. I'm definitely like, if you want the thing to be the way you want it to be, you have to build it yourself.
And I think there's a certain amount of naivete. Like you mentioned about the not understanding the true value of 10,000. The value of money and your thinking around money changes so much as you grow a business. So
constantly, yeah,
for sure. I think it's surreal that we're having this conversation because I was one of the early contributors in your crowdfunding campaign. Of just being a local foodie. Yeah, I think that's great. So I think I have my team do a little bit of research into the background, just especially if I know the person. I was like, just you go find information and pull back in case there's something. And they found record of you having originally wanted to be a lawyer.
Oh, God.
Is that true? Is that internet true?
Yes, actually. So
tell me about how the lawyer becomes a chef, because I also did some background education and ended that path, but I'm wondering what brought you there.
Okay, so being in high school, there was a grade 13. I grew up in Ontario. I don't normally talk about that. But right kind of before then, between grade 10 and grade 11, I went on an international exchange program. I lived in BC for 3 months and then Kerala, India for 3 months when I was 17. Completely blew my mind wide open. Kind of changed my path a lot, and then decided that when I graduated, I was going to go into international and comparative studies and pre-law at Western University. I had a wicked scholarship. I went about 2.5 months in. I had to sit down with, I don't even remember what they're called, the person that tells you not to quit university, and said,
that's the official title. Yeah.
I hope the chat blows up with that one. And sat down with them and was like, look, anybody can do what you're asking people to do. Anybody can read a paper and write another paper about it. I'm a doer, big time. I'm a very tactile learner. I need to be doing a thing. And I'd already been a cook for a couple of years to kind of help pay for school as well. And just decided that was it. I was going to actually apply back home in Sudbury, Ontario. So, I was already 6 hours away. Apply back home to welding and to culinary school, and whoever gave me the bigger scholarship, that's what I was going to do with my life. So yeah, I was even like writing my test LSATs, and had studied for them. I would be a really great lawyer. I just need like 18 paralegals to do my paperwork. But no, it's culinary school. Man, I was my like student council president for a 1-year compressed program. Culinary school is really fun.
Great. So you mentioned Scapes, and you mentioned the crowdfunding is Startscapes.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit from your point of view, why Scapes eventually became the Handpie company.
That's like such a cool part of the story that I wish that I'd heard more stories like mine, especially in culinary school, that, you know what, this isn't just grooming you to be a hotel chef or a restaurant chef. There's so many other paths that it can take. I was lucky enough to be the first year graduating class of the applied degree in culinary operations at Holland College. So it was kind of a 2-year upgrading. I'd already had my red seal at this point. And I learned a little bit about food manufacturing, about food science, about facilities design. So kind of pulled on that a little bit, but lucky enough again that PEI has an amazing, it's called the Food Island Partnership. And they put on the Food Excel program. So I was a part of that. Levi, I'm going to jump all over the place. But so I was
Right.
running sweeps. Running any food operation in PEI in the winter, especially rural, is crazy. So while we were down for Christmas, or we did Christmas, we were normally closed for 2 weeks. I found out about the program, joined it, and to get into Food Excel, you had to pick one product that you were going to make as manufacturing. I'm like, well, hand pies are already super taking off on our menu. Let's just run this. Let's run the numbers. We're going to do this for fun. No. My staff all came back from the winter break, and I had bought a new sign and renamed the business and crunched all the numbers, and we were now the Handpie company. So still in 540 square feet. We were making hand pies, 16 on a sheet pan, trying to like balance them in upright, tiny kind of home freezers. Just really, really ramped up production. And that's that's the very beginning of the hand pie company.
So before we go into that second part of the journey, do you have any regrets about the decision?
No.
No, it's all been good.
Might just be a personality thing too. No regrets. No, I'm really proud. I can own every decision I've ever made. And there's definitely some stumbling blocks in there, and we can talk about the major one too, but no regrets. It was the smartest decision ever. Scapes was only scalable to a certain point. In my mind, we had a giant menu, really seasonal, really, chef inspired, but that could only be that way for me if it was really small. Hand pies, the whole operation, I'm still learning as I go, is extremely scalable, and it's providing a real future for myself, my team, my community, all of that.
So tell me a little bit more about, so you converted you were in the Borden Carleton area when you first pivoted, and you stayed in the same location as Scapes?
Yes. So this will be a fun part of the story.
So tell me how that grew to from then to now, how did that happen?
Awesome. So about a year into running the Handpie company in that tiny location, we were already starting to outgrow it, which is amazing. Finally, when your customer base can find you, also kind of in the middle of nowhere. Then I got fairly short notice that my landlord was selling my building. Kind of a quick scramble. Quickly found another location, still in the Gateway Village of Borden, which is kind of a really touristy strip, really just runs in the summer. But we found a comparable space that happened to be way more rent. It wasn't feeling right. We got in there, started to do some light renovations, and the floor fell through with a piece of equipment. We just found a ton of mold. Like, everything went wrong that could go wrong. We found out that we only had 90 amps of power, and even my equipment at that point needed 200. Everything went wrong. The universe was just like hard no at that point. It sucked. It was the middle of winter. I think it was a February as well. And it was actually a storm day when all of this happened, when everything kind of came to a crux. And I had to call all my staff and let them know I was laying them off because we didn't have a location and I didn't know where we were going to go. Business was taking off. The promise was there, but we were kind of shop homeless. So we were still operating as the other shop at this point. This all kind of happened at once. One of my regulars came in, Lori, and she said, "Hey, I know you're looking for a new spot. I own the old Scotiabank in Albany, and I know it's really big, but I want you just to come have a walkthrough." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is crazy. Okay, sure. I will give it a shot, but I know it's way out of my budget. It's way out of my range. It's 4 times the size. But whatever." Went on another complete storm day, walked into this old bank, which had been my bank. It was extremely surreal. But Levi, if you've been in our new shop, it has windows all along the whole front of the building. It was still set up like a bank, but immediately the gears were turning. I'm a sucker for natural light. This would allow all of my production team to have that natural light when you're doing a repetitive thing all the time. You need something to look at. But yeah, it clicked. It was a major, major jumping point. So then there were 3 months of renovations where I myself was ripping up like 4 layers of old carpet in a bank. I learned all about epoxy flooring, had to buy my first walk-in freezer that I thought would be the biggest and last walk-in freezer I'd ever have to buy. We've outgrown it like 8 times since then.
Yeah.
So yeah, thankfully all my staff believed in this crazy thing that we were building. They all came back in. We've been in that location now since 2017. Yeah. And it's grown and grown. Once we got wholesale going, we have our amazing distributor that I've already talked about. It keeps building, and honestly, the future is even brighter. Like the next jump that I have in the works is big and scary, and that's why we do what we do, right?
Great. Let's save big and scary. We'll do that later in the conversation. I'd like to touch on team.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in team, and I really, really want a strong team, and I want people to enjoy what they do and
Mhm.
feel like they can grow in what they do. This is why we're doing this talk, is an idea from our team. Uh, I have externally looking in on your social media and from a spectator mode, I've always noticed that your teams always seem really positive, engaged, and passionate about what they're doing with you.
Mm.
I would like to know, first of all, is that the truth, or am I just reading a really good marketing plan? But also, if that's the truth, do you think that's just your personality, or have you learned some of the takeaways or practical things that have led you to be successful that maybe other people here could take away and implement? Like, what have you done to create a good culture and team for you?
Hmm. I've been lucky to have some really great bosses through the years and some really horrible ones. And I think, being an entrepreneur, you need to have some boots on the ground time beforehand so that you learn from others' mistakes too. The last bosses I had in culinary were at the Wooden Monkey in Halifax. And I mean, Lil and Christine, if any of you know them, like Lil is just this force to be reckoned with. And she kind of taught me that you need to be the change that you want to see in the world. And I wanted to always be able to provide a work environment that was everything that I ever wanted to have in the industry. It was extremely respectful. It was using the best ingredients that we could find. It was surrounding yourself with a group of people who are trained and engaged and really positive. And I've just been really, really conscious throughout the whole process of building this core crew that I am so friggin' proud of. I haven't seen them in a month because we're shut down. I'm like, oh, I miss you guys.
So, would you say that you built this because of your interest and you knew what you wanted? Did you build it through force of will, which I know lots do, or have you taken any formal steps that make it like, does the culture rest upon you, or is the culture something that the business owns?
I'd say originally it probably rested on me, but in the conscious decision to bring in these personalities that would vibe with it and people that have the same kind of mission about food, it just makes sense. I won't say it solely rides on me now, because in the summertime we double our staff, we go up to 13 people. It can't all just ride on me. All of my managers are very empowered to kind of uphold this ethos that we have, and that seems really like hippie to say when we're making pies, but they're made with love. Come on.
That's great. So a little bit away from the team and all that, I find a lot of people when they hear about growth and they hear about change and they hear about your expansion, that everybody puts the business owner on a pedestal, or at least understands like they're like super successful and they're doing this for money. And most entrepreneurs I know are looking to make change or create something. And money isn't the forefront of their mind. They're not driven by a wealth mindset. So I'm wondering how you took we started off with your crowdfunding and to start originally, but as you grew Scapes and then as you made that pivot and opened, what are the other ways that you made that dream a reality financially? Like I shared a bit with you about like some of the realities of different steps and things I did. And I think that I talked to a lot, well, I know I talked to a lot of young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs who either think straight to big investment or they think big, I'd love to have a little bit of the insights about how you have grown it. How have you managed the financial realities of growing your idea?
Right. Which is super essential, right? And it wasn't until last year that I really started to think in an upgraded way about the financials. I was really lucky to have an amazing business coach here on PEI that taught me a lot more about like, you know what, the numbers aren't scary. The numbers are your power. It's okay to talk about the money side of things. You know, once you get really close to that $1 million revenue mark, it's you're kind of cracking through another ceiling, and then you have a whole other host of super fun issues on your plate. And we're getting really, really close to that. But how did I finance it along the way? I'm a very debt averse person. So building it with the Kickstarter first, number one, a bank would never lend a food service operation money. So I'll definitely say I have never gotten money from my bank beyond, you know, a fairly reasonable Visa card, which they make money off me for. So yeah, it was that 10 grand. It was bootstrapping. I mean, most line cooks I know can make something amazing out of, you know, scraps. And I kind of just converted that into a business mindset. Being really, really stubborn is that I can do a lot of things with a really small amount of money. Also making sure that you know things right off the bat about how to save for HST, how to save for payroll remittances. All of those things I learned absolutely the hard way by doing it wrong, by not getting set up with a bookkeeper right away. I mean, right now, I love my bookkeeper. I love my accountants. They are essentials. Everybody get them first. And yeah, just was really, really lucky that my landlord kind of comes from a larger corporation, a group of corporations, and believed in me as a business owner and actually funded a lot of our first leasehold improvements. And then I paid that back twice as fast as I had to. So now thankfully we could weather COVID because I'm so debt averse, and I have a little savings and we're growing slowly. Like my team knows that we would never get a bunch of equipment all at once. It's really, really spaced out. We usually wait till we really, really need it. Pinch points are kind of my favorite times to do things when they get really, really pinchy. But the next stage, the next jump is a really, really big one. And I'm super looking forward to hearing your other entrepreneurs talk about how they just took that next step to maybe get investors or higher access to capital.
Yeah, there's the startup and then there's the scale up, and then it's almost like a new leap.
Yeah.
So let's go there. What's the big and scary? What's coming up?
Oh, this is like so secret. So everybody that's here today, you guys are kind of hearing this first, but we're starting to put the gears in motion, so that sometime in the next probably 3 years, we will have a new facility. We'll keep this one. But right now, there's a crazy amount of regulations with the CFIA, Canadian government, Safe Food for Canadians Act, that right now our facility is provincially certified. We actually can't certify our current facility to be federal. So right now, tiny population on PEI, about 150, 155,000 people right now. That's the only population we have, especially during lockdowns. So to be able to ship a pie even across that giant bridge that's like 7 minutes away from me right now, we have to be federally certified. It's a giant jump. Trying to find that space on PEI is proving really, really difficult, very expensive. You know, the price tag kind of that we're looking at right now is a lot. I won't put a price tag on it right now. It's a couple $1 million, plus equipment, just a giant, giant jump. But then that would open us up to finally saying yes to all the retailers that want to carry Handpies across Canada. I don't know if we'll ever really get into direct-to-consumer shipping, just because I tried shipping Handpies to our designer in Ontario, and it was $120 in a giant styrofoam box with like 10 gel ice packs. And logistically, it drives me crazy. It's out of my wheelhouse right now.
I think the direct-to-consumer grocery trend will be your fan. They'll be your friend.
Oh man, dude. But yeah, I'm super looking forward to it. I feel like, yeah, this is the next natural jump.
Nice. That's a great jump. So one of the questions I like to ask people, especially as we get a little bit more background, and now that we know like a bit of your past, the pivot, where you're at now, and some of the things you want to do in the future,
Yeah.
why do you do it?
Ah.
And I'm really interested also, if you want to layer it in, or I'll ask it again,
Yeah.
is why you do it different than why you started doing it?
Yes. Okay, so why do I do it? I always say this piece in a way that is like anybody that deals with kids, kids that are really stubborn and that maybe get those report cards that are always like, yeah, if they just focused, if they just dedicated themselves to the task, they would succeed. That was always me. And maybe your kid's an entrepreneur. I fix problems. I definitely undiagnosed ADHD. I need to like just be doing all the things all the time. And I'm lucky enough that I found an industry that lets me work with my hands, that lets me work really, really fast, challenging, crunch times. I find a lot of cooks are like me. And when you can turn that into running your own empire, I keep saying 800 new things every day, but it's legit. Like the more you want to hustle, the more you want to learn, the more you want to fix things. You can do that when you run your own business, and you have to do that to run your own business, because you can't just keep things at the status quo, because then that's how they fall through the floor. You have to be constantly evolving and learning, and that just scratches all my itches.
Self-evolution. Nice.
Yeah.
So you've had probably periods of time where you feel successful, and maybe some days you feel less successful. I'm always interested in hearing, what is your definition of success? When do you, I tell a lot of people that I don't think success is big profits, big sales. I think success is attaining what you want to attain. When have you felt most successful? And was there a metric or a thing that made you feel that way?
There's been I constantly, fuel myself with comments from customers and having good staff, and I run all of our social media. So, all the good comments, they give you all those little boosts, right? Yes, I run all of our social media because I'm a crazy human. But I felt really successful. And I mean, I have a lot to learn. I'm not even 40 yet. I feel like when I'm 90, I might have a better grasp on, like what success really is. I feel really successful when I'm happy, when my family's happy, when I'm not constantly worried about money. And that's going to be different for everyone else, right? But I have a home, I have a vehicle, my family's healthy. That's successful on its own. But business successful, while I was renovating the new shop, so that was about 3 years ago, I had already kind of started planning and booking this trip that was a massive research trip to go to Cornwall, England, where pasties come from, because I was like, I cannot own a handpie company and not have been to where handpies come from. I'm not legit. I like huge truster. Nobody trusts me. So after I ripped up all the carpet and had all the contractors in, and they were like, given lists of things to do for 2 weeks, I took my whole family to Cornwall, England, and I went to 9 different pasty shops, lots of public transit, and ate pasties until I needed to like roll myself back on a plane. But there was one point where we walked like 7 kilometers around St. Ives, Cornwall, which is the most beautiful place other than PEI I've ever found on earth. And it felt so right. And I could go into a pasty shop, and when people, always ask tourists, why you're there and where you're from, and I could say I owned a pasty shop, and their eyes lit up. They knew what a pasty was. Half of my job is just education, telling people, like what this is and where it comes from, and I didn't really invent it. So I definitely had a moment in St. Ives with my family where I was like, dudes, this is so surreal. Like we've made it. This is it. This is
Oh, that's fantastic.
At that point, and then I'll be really quick about the second one, but running the numbers in December, right after New Year's. So let's say January 1st, what I do New Year's Day is I run our year numbers. So the staff have been laid off for their winter break, and it blew my mind, because I don't do bookkeeping enough, that we almost matched 2019. In a COVID year, in a year where our summer months, we didn't have tourists in 2020, June, July, and August were all running 50% of what they should have been. It was legit very scary this summer, but locals rallied in our fall and winter. Like our December was insane. Our December beat our August this year with half the staff. We busted it out, and just looking at those numbers being like, okay, this is real. This is sustainable. This, if we have this kind of a local following, like it, yeah, it just made everything worth it. So numbers.
So let's talk about, March, April, May last year. How did you deal with the COVID hit? Like, what
So
was
much
your thinking through? So much coffee, you say?
so much coffee. This is me without caffeine also. Yeah. So PEI's been in a bit of a different situation, right? Where it's still the big scary. It's still going on in the world. It's still very, very real. A lot of my family is still in Ontario. There's been some COVID scares within my immediate family, not on PEI. So all that being said, in March, it was just like, okay, so we figured this out. I was actually in Quebec City when Canada started to declare shutdowns. I was on one of the last kind of free flights to get back into PEI, and had a meeting with my staff being like, okay, this is real. Everybody's pivoting. They're closing down restaurants. We had about 1 week of kind of normal, and then everything boom shut. We don't have any inside seats as well, so we've always been takeout. But I'm lucky enough to have an amazing web person who got us to pivot into online ordering with curbside pickup within 3 days. We launched into straight curbside. We were one of the first and only in our area right away to be offering that really, really safe curb pickup where they order online, pay online, give us a call when they get there at their book time. And I was the one that was running out in the snow to do trunk drops, through the window, waves, just trying to really, I thrive on being a comfort food point for people. And the world needed it in March, April, and May. So we were trunk drops. I think it was for 7 weeks, just trunk drops. And so running social media really hard. I started doing daily updates on our Instagram stories. And the feedback from that was just that it made people feel like there was a tiny bit of normal in the world. So it was, just keeping our crew really, really tight, our bubble very small. We all kind of bubbled together. I'm lucky that I am completely surrounded by introverts who could slip into that very easily. And we just kept on keeping on. That's kind of how we got through the first.
So on a different note, there's you portray yourself in some of your conversation as somebody who does everything, but at the same time, like your social media and you drop floors. I've dropped 3 floors. I totally get it. But you've also mentioned some really great supports. So I love pointing out that entrepreneurs don't have to do it all themselves, and having a support network. So you've mentioned you have a web person, you've mentioned you have a business coach, and you had different educational opportunities. Maybe I'd love to know if you've lucked into all of that, or if you've made any real efforts to find that support. And what does the support of your business ownership team look like now as you operate?
In my mind, I kind of separated into 2 camps. So in the shop with my production crew, I am kind of the head of the octopus, right? I'm sure that maybe they all think that they are as well of their departments. I'm really, really lucky that I've built this team that they can do their job without me. And that's essential to grow even to this point, is that you need to bring in people that you trust. That I hired bakers because I have no pastry training as well. I'm a savory side chef that's maybe been thrown into pastry a couple times, really, really bad idea. But you need to bring in the people around you that can do the thing that you need them to do really, really well, so that you can do all of the other things. So in the shop, I would say I'm kind of the head manager. I do all the paperwork, all the scheduling, all the ordering, that sort of thing. That will change definitely as we scale. I'm really looking forward to getting in an operations manager, or I titled it like a junior operations manager, but someone to take on all those other things so that I can work on this big new giant jump. But externally, so web design, packaging design, I have those amazing people in my life. The business coach that I had last year was amazing. And the Food Island partnership has been invaluable. I did the Food Excel program as well as the Food Propel program. Both of them come with kind of small grants, but a lot of mentorship and a lot of connections and networking, which is always essential. Running a small business, especially rural, you're in a tiny bubble, even when there's no COVID bubble happening. And bringing in those people that can be, your supports to do all those extra things that they do really, really well and that you don't need to do, so that you can do what you do best, and what grows your business and what makes your business money and makes it sustainable. Yeah, the more that you can do that to bring in those amazing supports, the better.
So when did you figure that out? And was it through programs, or because I don't think that was the case when I first met you and you were starting Scape. So how did you get to that clarity that you have now? Because
I got
that wasn't
really
the
tired. Yeah, I don't even know if I still fully grasp it, because there's things that I'm still holding on to that I probably don't need to be. Yeah, I think just bit by bit, when it starts to get really hard, then light bulbs should go off. Listening to other entrepreneurial stories, podcasts have been amazing. Getting into the Food XL program, even, and just realizing that there's other entrepreneurs on this path. Man, we're not creating a wheel, no matter how much you think you are. And there's people that have been here before you, and learn from them. They're reaching a hand down to pull you up and take that hand, for sure. So it's an ongoing evolution, but the more that I do it, the better it feels. Just gonna keep on bringing in people that I respect and enjoy, and that tell me the way it is. I'm lucky enough that I have a new designer who will put me in a corner when I need to be put in a corner, and we all need that too when we're at the CEO stage.
Yeah, that's true. So one question that isn't always the most pleasant of questions, but I'd love your thoughts. You take it wherever you'd like. In the last period of time, either Scapes or Handpie Co,
Mm-hmm.
what has been the scariest thing for you?
Ooh.
Or scariest things? What are the things where you have had like doubts, or like really, really feeling fear?
I mean, COVID, for sure. Knowing that our industry is still crumbling breaks my heart, like every single day. My social media network is really, really strong. I follow a lot of other chefs, a lot of other restaurant owners. I'm lucky enough to have that circle, and things suck. So, we made it work. And I even hate, saying publicly like that we matched 2019 last year. And two, that came with sweat and tears and blood, probably. But knowing that that's not the case for everyone. Not everyone manufactures a product. A lot of people rely on that amazing experience that we miss going out, et cetera, et cetera. So COVID was truly scary and continues to be really, really scary. Everything can change in a snap. So being able to operate and put that fear in a little box in your head and continue to do what you do and continue to think about the future and growing. I'm learning how to be able to do that. And, other fear points were definitely, when we were shop homeless, that point, man, when even making the jump to the Handpie company. What was that right? I trust my gut more than anything. If you go into the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFP for all of you Myers-Briggs nerds. I love you. But I trust my gut a whole lot. And when I'm convinced of something, I am stubborn and I am plowing along that road. So I've always believed in this business and this, growth, and believed in myself. So it's, that's what gets me through the fear points, is being like, all right, we're going to make this happen. It might involve some pivots, but I can pirouette like a ballerina, Levi.
So one of the things I believe that for every really good business book or business podcast, there's 1,000 pieces of garbage. And I would love, because I can tell you mentioned podcasts, but where are you getting your most valuable information and external inputs from, changing your perspectives and introducing you to new ideas and thoughts about things?
I don't remember the names of them right now. There were 2 podcasts that you actually mentioned on social media, and I started following them.
So that would be How I Built This with Guy Raz, probably, and the Tim Ferriss podcast, I think, are my inspirations for this type of interview, for sure.
The How I Built This is amazing. and I really, really love it. And there's another one called Breakthrough with Sarah Roach Lewis. And that one has actually cracked open so many other levels of my brain. It's the premise of that one is Sarah interviews female business owners that have cracked the $1 million in revenue mark. And she talks just like this about the nitty gritty and how you got there, how you continue to get there across all different industries. And she actually interviewed Patty, who owns the Kitchen Door in Dartmouth, who massively scaled her operation from being like a caterer in the basement of her home into having this giant, I visited it, like giant facility that is beautiful and makes food and does catering and does take-home meals and does classes. And I think it's really, really important operating in a bubble to hear those other stories and to know that you aren't actually alone in all of this, and just to be constantly inspired.
Yeah, that's great. Any books? Are you a reader?
I used to be. Really bad. TikTok has taken over my life lately. Reading books. I really love Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, and I have his marketing book, and whenever I find myself with just like 10 minutes, I'll crack that and read a couple pages again. I have another one that I can't actually say the title of. It's Do the Effing Work. If you have that one, it's really good too, that you can just crack it open.
You know we're not censored, right?
My son is home from the store. I know he's heard.
We have a really great question that I didn't think to ask, and I should, that come in from the audience of, have you faced any specific challenges for being a female entrepreneur that you'd like to share? I'd love to hear that.
How long do we have, Levi?
15 minutes.
The short version is, of course, definitely. It's ongoing. It definitely still continues. Thankfully, I haven't got this question in the last year. But for my first 5 years of business, people would walk straight into the shop and ask me where the owner is. And, you know, I had a male baker who I hope gets to see this. For about a year and a half, he worked for me. And the whole joke was that everyone would look through the glass, because we have a glass big viewing window, and refer to him as the boss constantly. So yeah, there's little things like that. There's tone. There's being taken seriously in any public business forum, any chamber event. I mean, I'm only 5'6", and when I show up to events and there's all these real close talker bros in suits, I mean, thankfully I got my start cooking when I was 16, and I've worked in an industry that is extremely male dominated. And I learned how to be a line cowboy, who is basically like a 6'6", 300-pound man in this body. So I can meet people on different levels, and I find myself having to fall back on that, which is a little bit unfortunate sometimes. So yes, of course, there's been challenges with banks, on the phone, in person, being taken seriously, being part of chambers of commerce. Even I'm not part of one anymore. I'll say that I've been through two. But that is obviously not what drives me or what dictates how much I grow as a business owner. I have this nice little network through my business coach now of other women business leaders that are, close or above my level. And it's just good to remember that sometimes you need to have those people around where you can take, the face off and be really real with. And I know that you identify with that too, Levi. So you just need to have the right crew around you, and obviously believe in yourself.
So if you were talking to a new or young entrepreneur who was female, any advice on preparing for that journey, preparing for that expectation?
It might be industry specific too. But I have to say it helps to be an extrovert who is extremely stubborn and believes in themselves. And if you need to fake it till you make it, know that all of us are doing that. I am very open that I'm learning 800 new things a day, and I don't know everything. And I will openly admit that, but never falling back on being meek or, don't shy away from anything. Do the hard things, poke the bruises, chase the bears, just keep on doing it. And then you'll learn how to do it. And it just becomes natural. Honestly, I've been told by my business coach that I have a problem, that if there isn't a fire that I'm putting out, I make my own fires. Uh, so just keep doing that. Keep pushing, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, but then those are the best mountains to climb, right? Or the hard ones, because when you get to the top, the air is fresh.
So I just realized we need sub taglines for these recorded talks, and yours is going to be poke the bruises and chase the bears. I think it's going to be great.
Okay, there's one more to that I say all the time. It's like, how do you do the big, scary, hairy thing? It's a dragon, right? How do you eat a dragon? One bite at a time. You just gotta start chewing on that thing.
Yeah, that's great. I'm coming to the end of what I wanted to discuss and share, and I wanted to make sure that we covered a lot of bases. Yeah. Is there anything that's that you, if you had a platform and you were able to talk to all entrepreneurs, sort of where you were 5 years ago, that you wish you had been told? That you, things, surprises or things that you wish you had been told that maybe we haven't covered today?
Definitely. I mean, I knew nothing 5 years ago, and I still know nothing, dude. It's really niche knowledge that I have of my own industry. It's just that it's gonna get easier in certain ways. When you bring other people into your business to start doing those things that give you a crazy amount of stress, like hire a bookkeeper right away. Different levels come with different challenges, but you will hit these points where you can breathe again, and where you're not constantly, 24 hours a day on your social media, on your email train, answering calls. There are peaks and breaths of fresh air, and you just need to keep working towards that. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And if you're believing in your business strong enough, you will punch through walls and get there. I'm using all these crazy analogies. Hopefully no one has to do the closed captioning for this. But yeah, just keep going and believe in yourself, and bring those people around you that believe in you too, and make the magic happen. Yeah.
I think what I'd like to see, and what I really believe, and I'm glad we're aligned in this, is on top of all that perseverance and grit that you have, that you've opened up and shared the challenges. You've shared with other support networks, with team members, with advisors, with mentors, with coaches. I think that that's a really good message, and I'm glad that we had the conversation. So as for our first interview, first speaker series, I'm hoping it was a good experience for you. I'm really glad you took the time and you joined us for this conversation. I'm excited about the conversations that will come from them having heard your conversation.
I'm so excited to hear everyone else's.
All right.